Imagine a land gasping for breath, its soil cracked and parched. This was the kingdom of Israel, trapped in a 3-year drought declared by God's own prophet, Elijah. The king, Ahab, and his queen Jezebel had led the people astray, turning their worship to a lifeless idol named Baal, a so-called god of rain and storm who remained silent as the land withered. But one man's faith refused to dry up. Elijah, a rugged prophet of the one true God, stood against the tide. He knew that the spiritual drought was far more dangerous than the physical one. The time had come for a final, dramatic showdown. A decision had to be made. So Elijah sent a message to King Ahab, and soon the people of Israel, along with Ahab and 450 prophets of Baal, gathered on the slopes of Mount Carmel. The air was thick with tension. Elijah stood before the weary crowd, his voice ringing with authority. He asked them a question that cut to the heart. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. The people were silent. They were caught, uncertain, and afraid. Their silence was the answer Elijah expected. So he proposed a test, a divine contest to prove once and for all who held the real power. He declared, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Let's not argue with words. Let's see some action. The challenge was simple and fair. 2 bulls would be prepared for sacrifice, each laid on a separate altar with wood. But here was the catch. No one was allowed to light a fire. Elijah proclaimed, You call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, he is God. The proposal was dramatic, undeniable. A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd. What you say is good, they replied. The stage was set. The world was about to witness a contest between the living God and a silent idol. The prophets of Baal went first. They prepared their bull and began their ritual at sunrise. They danced and chanted, a frantic chorus calling out, O Baal, answer us. But there was no voice, no sign, no spark. The sun climbed higher in the sky, beating down on their desperate ceremony. As noon approached, Elijah couldn't resist a little divine sarcasm. He called out to them, Shout louder. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. His words stung, and the prophets of Baal grew even more frenzied. They shrieked, they leaped on the altar, and in a gruesome display of devotion, they began to cut themselves with swords and spears until their blood flowed. They prophesied and raved until the time of the evening sacrifice, but their God remained utterly silent. Nothing happened. Their energy spent, they collapsed in exhausted defeat. Then it was Elijah's turn. He calmly called the people to come near him. He wasn't there for a show. He was there to rebuild what was broken. He found the Lord's altar, which had been torn down, and he began to repair it. He took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes of Israel, symbolizing the unified nation God intended them to be. He carefully arranged the wood on the altar, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on top. But then, he did something utterly bizarre, something that seemed to make his task impossible. He commanded, Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood. They did it. He said, Do it again. They did it a second time. Do it a third time, he ordered. They did, until the water drenched the sacrifice, soaked the wood, and ran down the altar, filling a trench he had dug all around it. The whole setup was completely waterlogged. There was no trickery here. Humanly speaking, this altar could never burn. With all eyes fixed on him, Elijah stepped forward. There was no shouting, no dancing, no self-harm. He simply lifted his face to the sky and prayed a quiet, powerful prayer. Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. His prayer was not for his own glory. It was for God's. He continued, answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. It was a prayer of pure faith, trusting completely in the God who had sent him. The whole mountain held its breath, and then it happened. The sky split open. A terrifying, magnificent fire of the Lord fell from heaven. It wasn't just a flicker. It was a torrent of divine power. The fire consumed everything, not just the sacrifice and the wood, but the stones of the altar, the soil beneath it, and it even licked up all the water that was in the trench. The heat and light were overwhelming. The people, who had been watching in stunned silence, fell prostrate on the ground, their faces in the dust. A single, unified cry rose from the thousands gathered. The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God. In that moment of awe and terror, their wavering hearts found their anchor. The contest was over. The God of Israel had answered. In the aftermath of the heavenly fire, the people's allegiance was reset. The deception was broken. At Elijah's command, they seized the false prophets of Baal, and the land was cleansed of the idolatry that had poisoned it for so long. The spiritual drought was ending. But what about the physical one? Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, bowed low to the ground with his face between his knees, and prayed again. This time, not for fire, but for rain. He sent his servant to look toward the sea 7 times. 6 times, the servant returned with the same report. There is nothing. But Elijah kept praying. On the 7th time, the servant came back and said, a cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea. That was all the sign Elijah needed. He sent a message to Ahab to hurry home before the rain stopped him. Soon, the sky grew black with clouds. The wind rose, and a heavy rain began to fall. The land drank deeply, and life began to return. The living God, who had proven his power with fire, now showed his mercy with water. The story of Mount Carmel is more than just a miracle. It's a timeless lesson in faith. It shows that one person, standing in obedience to God, can be a catalyst for turning a whole nation back to truth. True spiritual power isn't found in loud rituals, popular opinion, or effort. It's found in a quiet, trusting relationship with the God who hears and answers. Elijah's faith was the kindling, and God's power was the fire. That day, the people saw that their God was not a distant, silent idol, but a personal, powerful, and living Lord who is active in the world and in the lives of those who call on Him. He is the God who answers by fire, and He is still seeking hearts that are willing to trust Him today. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that brings faith to life. See you next time.